Start anytime.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Common Sense Business Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Weems. This is our second episode down here at Market Street Media. I have got my friend Tyler Minton with us today. I wanted to bring him on and talk about his entrepreneurial journey. Start maybe with his upbringing and as a kid to developing a business and a personal brand that has the blue check mark next to his name on Instagram. So, Tyler, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Good, man. So, fresh back from South Korea.
Yeah.
I hadn't even asked you, what were you doing over there?
One of my best friends moved there a couple years ago to teach and fell in love with it and doesn't want to come back. And within a month of being there, met a local and married her. So I was there for his wedding. And I've always kind of wanted to visit that area anyway. So it's kind of the perfect way to match all that together.
What was that time difference?
13 hours ahead.
Okay.
So today's like the first day I don't feel jet lagged.
Yeah.
And it might hit me later, but that was definitely an interesting one. I've been to Australia a couple of times and that's huge difference. Like I think it's like almost 24 hours.
Right.
But for some reason this one hit me harder than any of my travels.
Strange.
Yeah, it was rough.
Good to have you back. Hopefully you can make it through the podcast all right today.
I'll be all right.
So what's funny about Tyler and I is we used to be competitors in the fitness industry. So it's cool now that we share this friendship. Worked out a little more together before you had kids, but I think that always slows things down a little bit. But Tyler, I'm going to just start back with like your upbringing. I know you got into wrestling in high school, and just talk about, just the evolution of Tyler Minton throughout the years from starting at an early age.
Yeah, it's always kind of a funny thing because anyone who went to school with me, I'll randomly see someone I went to school with that I haven't seen since, say, high school. And it's odd. It's almost rude. They don't mean it rude. They mean it complimentary, but it comes off really rude. And it's always something like, wow, we would have never imagined that you would have done this stuff. I'm like, well, that sucks because I did. I did imagine it. You guys just didn't like me that much. Like through school, I was, I guess I didn't have any like physical or external qualities that would have made people think I would be doing really anything that I did. I wasn't athletic. I wasn't good at really any sport. Was kind of like introverted. I didn't really have a lot of friends. My only friends were other introverts that like we would play in the woods and ride bikes together.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of like the Stranger Things kids. Like me and my friends growing up, we stuck to ourselves and we were unlike anyone else. And I don't know, like I never fit in with a lot of people. But I remember like even as a kid, I always thought really different. Like it was almost like looking back, I didn't think highly of myself. In fact, I had like really, really bad self-confidence as a kid. But I always remember, even though I had bad self-confidence, always like, it sounds kind of arrogant, but I always felt like I was, I want to say better, but like the kids that would be making fun of me, I got made fun of and picked on a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would bother me and it would get to me. But I remember about the high school level, like I started really kind of feeling like I was better than them. I know it sounds
what caused that?
I don't know. I would kind of see their attitudes, and I remember. I don't know if this is part of my upbringing. I had really good parents, and I've always been like a pretty open thinker. Like even as a kid, like I was raised in a super strict religious home, a very conservative right-wing home. But even as a kid, I was like already questioning politics. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, I don't really believe that. Like, yeah, I remember in middle school, like not necessarily agreeing with some of the same politics my parents said. I didn't agree with the other side either, but I didn't agree with any of them. But I just remember like by the high school time, I was already thinking of things different. So like these kids that would pick on me and the things that they would pick on, I remember in my head thinking like, well, I'm smarter than you. Or I vividly remember just thinking like when we're adults, like I think life's going to be easier for me, or I'll succeed. And I just already knew that all that stuff would end after high school, the stuff that made them cool. And I remember like once I started kind of realizing that, it made me feel better. And it just made me wrap my head around it all a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I started wrestling in high school because I wasn't good at the other sports, and the wrestlers were the weirdos. I had a couple friends that had wrestled, and I remember the wrestlers always, like, they would even like show up to school wearing pajamas sometimes. They're
Mm-hmm.
just like, wrestling is still to this day known as like the weird kids. Um, and I just felt like it was a group that I could fit in because I was a weird kid. And so I went to practice one day, and it was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. It was absolutely miserable. I remember we had something called the campus mile, and it was a mile around the campus, but it included hills, like up, down, like some of it was in like a big field up a hill, and then it ended with a stadium run on the track,
Mm-hmm.
and that was called the campus mile. And even with all the ups and downs, it was still like over miles, like a mile and a half. And I remember we had to show up. It said, anybody interested in wrestling, wear gym clothes and show up. So we showed up. I showed up the first day, and I remember the coach asked how many people had ever ran a campus mile, and like a few kids grinned at each other because they'd already wrestled. They knew what it was, and the rest of us, I'd never even heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he shows us what it was. We do like a walkthrough. He's like, okay, if you want to be on this team, you have 5. And like most of us had never ran a mile in our lives, and here we are running over 5 miles of different terrains and stadium, like through going up and down stairs. And we just kind of look at him, and you quickly realize he's dead serious.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, let's go. And we do it, and it was miserable. I just remember being so hard. And I just remember like seeing kids drop off, like quit.
I was going to ask how many made it through it.
I think we ended up with like half. Like, people were quitting. They didn't want anything to do with it. And that motivated me. I'm like, okay, so the only thing I have to do to be different than these kids that quit is to not quit. That I can do. I can't necessarily like guarantee I'm going to be really good or really athletic at wrestling, but what I can do is not be a quitter. So I kept going. I ended up finishing it. I remember the first week of practice was like that. It was just coach asking us to do unrealistic, outrageous things, and
Mm-hmm.
kids were just dropping off like flies. In my head, I'm like, this physically sucks, but it's kind of easy. I can do this. And it's weird. I fell in love with wrestling. I remember every day by the end of school, looking at the clock, dreading school being over. And I didn't like school, but dreading school would be over because I knew that wrestling practice was coming. But I'd still do it like every day. And I eventually just fell in love with wrestling. And my first year, I didn't win a single match. I lost literally every single match, but was having fun doing it, which was just unheard of. And by my second year, I was winning tournaments and doing good. And that was just because it was the first sport I'd ever done that you literally can just outwork other people.
Right.
There was no, like it's literally like God-given abilities, not even talent. So like God-given abilities and attributes against someone else's. And I recognized early on that if I ran extra, I could be in better shape than the other person. If I drilled more, I could last longer than the other person, even if they were better than me. And I just loved that. It was a sport where, like if it wasn't like baseball, where if your parents donated more money to the new building, like your parents, that's actually the position I was thinking of when it happened in my school. But there was nothing like that. There wasn't, well, this kid has the best glove and the best cleats and the best bat. So like the way wrestling works, if me and you are wrestling at the same weight class and we have a tournament this weekend, we show up to school Monday, me and you wrestle, and the winner of our wrestling match is varsity that weekend and the loser's JV.
Oh, wow.
And
so that'll be changed every week.
And that'll be every single week.
Okay.
So you literally, like the best one literally gets to do it. Yeah. And no matter what, even if you lose, you get to wrestle. So it's such a pure sport. I love it. And I just fell in love with it. It was, I became good at it, and something about it was fun. So I kept wrestling, and when I got to college,
did you wrestle in college?
No, I did not. Okay. I was good, but I wasn't that good. There's those, like, I'd gotten some scholarships and offers, but not enough to make it, worth paying the difference in the tuition. So I was wrestling, I was still like wrestling on the side just with friends and just to have fun. And I enjoyed it and kept doing it. And I remember I remember seeing some kids at the gym at the college wrestling. I thought they were wrestling, and I just went over there and I said, "Hey, I'm a wrestler. Can I join in?" They said, "Great." And I saw them taking each other down. So I joined in and I took this guy down and he choked me. He started choking me and I freaked out because I thought they were wrestling. I didn't know they were doing jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
And I was a little upset. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he explained that they were actually an MMA gym and they were wrestling 2 submissions. So I was kind of interested in that. So I started practicing with him, then went to a gym with him and
Now, how old are
took
you
up
at this
MMA.
point?
At that point, it was 19. I think I just turned 19.
Okay.
Actually, I think I was still 18. I wasn't even 19 yet.
Okay.
So I discovered MMA through that. And while I was in college, my college was paid for because I did really good in school to make sure it was, but I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. But I recognized that like nutrition would be something that could help me in mixed martial arts because weight cutting was a big thing there. So I went to school for nutrition.
So you'd already decided this wasn't just a hobby, like you want to maybe do something with this, or did you fall in love with this hobby so much that you're like, I'll somehow make money doing this?
No, at first, no. And in fact, it wasn't even until my third fight that I thought it was something I really, really loved. I fought my first fight. I had only been training a couple months, and my first fight, I won. It lasted 9 seconds, but it was like it almost didn't feel like anything because I didn't get
You weren't
hit.
battle tested.
Yeah, I didn't get hit or anything.
So what makes a person go from just doing jujitsu as a hobby to actually like going and fighting? And what does that look like? Does it look like the whole Spider-Man scenario, Spider-Man 1, where he sees an article in the newspaper and he just shows up and they're just like fighting him? Or
Honestly, yeah, kind of. When I first started fighting, it was like the last of the of it was like a last of the really rough, hard days of mixed martial arts. Now it's all regulated and there's more rules. And my first several fights, they were at like National Guard armories in Middlesboro and Williamsburg, Kentucky, and Harlan, Kentucky, like middle of nowhere. It wasn't even legal in Tennessee, so we had to go to Kentucky to do it. And you would literally get there, weigh in, and they would just look down the list of someone who weighed the same as you or close to the same as you and be like, okay, you're fighting this guy. You had you found out who you were fighting an hour before you fought him. You would weigh in and fight 2 hours later. You wouldn't know who the guy was. He could have had 20 fights and it could be your first fight. Like, it's just like, hey, you're going to fight
all on
this
the
guy.
basis of body weight.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you both weighed 170. You're going to fight this guy. And that guy could have been doing it for years. He could have been a Golden Glove boxer. But there you go. And you would fight. And like I said, my first one was 9 seconds and I won. My second one I won in 42 seconds. Still didn't really get hit or anything. Both the times it was a submission. The first time the guy like dove at my legs and I went for a guillotine choke and I sprawled at the same time and like slammed his face on the mat. So he was done. Then the second guy I just choked out with a triangle. I remember I put my legs around his head and he lifted me up to slam me and then just goes to sleep and hits the ground. And I still just like, oh, this is fun, but it's kind of, I don't know. I don't know. It was just, I didn't have a feeling about it. And then my third fight was the first legal fight in Tennessee history. And it was at the Millennium Center in Johnson City. It was called the Millennium Melee. And I got a concussion at the end of round 1. So I don't remember round 2 or 3. I gave my opponent a concussion at the beginning of round 2. So by round 3, we were both just swinging. There was just blood everywhere. There's one point I'm holding him by his throat against the cage and literally just hammer fisting him in the nose. And it was chaos. If I hadn't seen a video on it, I wouldn't know what happened. And then I ended up winning. And after that, this is really odd, but after that, I decided this is something I want to do. I loved
you
it.
said a few minutes ago, you said it wasn't until the third fight that I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I loved it. But I remember, so I was concussed. I had to go to the hospital. I was concussed. I don't remember anything. I remember the first half of the first fight of the first round. But it's really weird. I remember at one point in round 3, he's on top of me, and I vividly remember. I remember where I'm at in the cage. I remember the look on his face. I remember like the feeling of getting hit. I remember like looking to my right and seeing my mom and dad and my little sister in the crowd, and like the look on my mom's face, because I've just got blood coming out of like my nose, and this guy just keeps hitting me. And I remember the crowd was like chanting my name. And as a loser kid that no one cared about, like that felt good.
Yeah.
And I just remember that chant, and that was so cool to me. That was addictive. And I ended up getting on top, flipping him over, and finishing the fight, and won by decision. And I remember falling in love with like that, like the fact that people were like wanting to see me. Like that was such a different feeling for me, and it felt really cool. So I just I kept fighting, and within I guess a year and a half or 2 years, I became the Tennessee State amateur middleweight champion, then the United States Southeastern middleweight champion, then the United States amateur middleweight champion.
Okay.
So I just, again, I think honestly, looking back, I was more in love with the feeling of being good at something and being someone that people actually wanted to see. Like I fought in New Orleans, and people like drove down.
Wow.
I had like vans of people driving down to New Orleans to watch me. And
that's cool.
For me, that was weird.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with that more than I fell in love with the actual sport, to be honest.
Right. So how old are you now at this point?
34. I'll be 35.
No. I'm saying at this point of our story. Yeah.
That point I was probably like 20, 21.
All right. So
I think I was 21.
You're junior, almost senior year of college. All right. So you're studying nutrition. Okay. So you finish undergrad. Where'd you go to school again?
ETSU is where I finished my undergrad.
All right. So you finish up there, and then what's next?
So I guess sophomore year, I decided I was going to open up a gym, because honestly, I started personal training while I was in college, because it was something in the fitness realm. I recognized that people by then locally, I had a decent name just through fighting, and I just knew that I could utilize that to sell, to sell personal training. And so I was personal training. I was managing a local gym, the first CrossFit gym in this area. I was managing it and coaching at it. And I ended up kind of running the whole thing. The owner didn't live local, so she had nothing to do with the gym. And she just came in and announced one day she was closing the gym, like no heads up, nothing. I'm young, trying to figure out my life, and I'm losing my job. So at that point, I decided I was going to open up my own gym. I knew nothing about business. If I did, I wouldn't have done this, but I had $2,000 to my name. Like literally all I had was about $2,000. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go open up my own gym. So I found all the equipment I could buy with $2,000. And essentially that was 2 racks and a couple bars. Me and a friend welded some kettlebells. We made kettlebells. We took basketballs, filled them with sand, and duct taped them for medicine balls. And then we had some like rusty metal. I just had people donate random equipment. And that was $2,000. And then this is so dumb, I know, but I didn't even think about the fact that I'd also just moved out of my parents' home. And now I also needed a place to live, and I just spent all my money. So I remember someone asking me, well, how are you going to, like, do you already have your first year's rent, like, saved up? I never even knew that was like a business thing. Remember, it was Raphael, the owner of a few local restaurants here, a great businessman. I was like, no, I'm just.
So how did you know him?
He was a client. Okay. He was a client. And I did security at a lot of his restaurants, like his bars and stuff. I was a security guy.
Sorry to interject.
No. And I just remember, him, he said, Uncle, do you already have money saved for the first year's rent? I was like, no, I just hope that I'll make enough. I'll get enough members to do it. And I was honest with him. I said, to be honest with you, I don't even have a place to live. So there was an attic in this place, and I made the attic an apartment in like 3 days. So like as I was building out the gym, which I didn't have enough equipment to build out hard, I made upstairs an attic. I had no heat, no air, no windows. Totally illegal to live there because the only exit was through the gym. So if there was a fire downstairs, I was dead. There was no other way to exit this place. It wasn't a legal residence. I don't think I can get in trouble for that now. Completely illegal. And every dime the gym made, I just put back into the gym. I was able to pay rent month 1. There was never a single month that I wasn't able to pay my bills. And the only money I lived off of for the first 2 years was money I made in fights because I went professional, and money I made doing security jobs. So I lived very poor. Yeah, I will just say poor. It's better. I lived very poor and just kept putting all that money back into the gym until eventually, like, we moved the gym 3 more times. And by my last location, I was actually like making money off the gym, like living decently comfortable, still not making much money at all, but to the point that I was at least making money off my gym. But then, I became a gym owner. It wasn't even like, I never even thought like, hey, I want to own a gym years from now. Right. It was just a way that I saw to make money at the time. And I hit it. I hit it 100 miles an hour. So
during this same time, you're talking about you finally getting to the point where you were making money, but it would take place during this time is nutrition business.
Yeah. So nutrition was something I started learning kind of just to help me, and then I started helping people with it just completely for free. I didn't know what I wanted to go to school for, but nutrition important. I mean, I was enough to know. Now I was an overweight kid, and I knew what helped me become, like lose weight as a kid was improve the way I ate, and wrestling. So I knew how to work out. I knew how to help people work out. I'm like, well, nutrition's an important thing too. So I'm at least going to go to school for that. Might as well. But I had no aspirations of making. In fact, I didn't know what to do. I remember my last year of high school. I started dating a girl, and this is weird, but it is relevant. I started dating a girl who was like one of the most popular girls in school. She like prom queen. It was really weird. Like even I couldn't believe it at that point. And again, people thought they were complimenting me, but it was really rude. They would say like, "Wow, man, like I can't believe you pulled that off." And well, that's a jerky thing to say, but I couldn't either. And I remember in college, her mom like pressured her to break up with me because one of the reasons like I wasn't going to school for anything that could lead to a future.
Right.
And I remember her just flat out telling me that.
So that adds some gasoline to the fire.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Gosh. Yeah. So like that was like, oh, well, nutrition isn't a career. Like what are you going to do with that career? If I had my attitude now, then I would have looked at her and been like, well, you could benefit a lot from improved nutrition. She's an overweight lady, but but she just laughed at it. She thought it was just a joke. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, cool. So that happened. And then, nutrition kind of became a thing that I was just doing for free, and I started helping people with it. And then I started helping some fighter friends with it. Some of them started getting into the UFC. I started becoming known for being really, really big at my weight class because my weight cuts went really well. My fighters were doing really well with their weight cuts. So I remember I get called up by a guy that at the time was, I think, ranked number 3 or 2. And I think he was the number 1 contender. Chris Weidman, ranked in the top of the world in the UFC. And he asked me what I charged for nutrition. And I told him I would have to come up with, I would have to give him a business proposal. So give me a couple days, but I told him that because I didn't charge anything. Yeah. I had no business plan. I didn't know what in the world. Yeah. I'd never charged for it before. And he hired me after I gave him my business plan. He hired me. He later told me that although he did have a lot of success with me and he liked working with me, the only reason he hired me to begin with because I was so cheap. But I thought I was just charging him so much. It was the most money I'd ever personally made doing one thing. Right. And to him, it was just like, this kid's so cheap.
But in retrospect, I mean, that was what got you attention in the UFC.
Oh yeah. So after that, I remember the very next person I worked with after him was my favorite fighter of all time, who was the UFC champion, Daniel Cormier. And then after that was another UFC champion, Max Holloway. Then after that, Khabib Nurmagomedov. And it's like my career skyrocketed in nutrition. It was literally, it wasn't even supposed to be an actual career.
But did any of those guys ever hit you up and they're like, hey, Weidman told me you don't charge anything at all? Like, what are these prices about?
Daniel Cormier was honest with me and told me that he's the reason I knew that Chris said that. He was like, yeah, man, like you need to charge more. And I did. Mm-hmm. So like DC was always really like, he told me I needed to charge more, that it was worth more. And I did. I charged him more. So, and then after that, it just became a business. Like it went from a thing that wasn't even a real business to, like, I remember doing interviews with like top MMA journalists. And I remember the first time I heard Ariel Helwani, who is like the top journalist in mixed martial arts, wanted to do an interview with me. And I remember him saying that I was like a star in the nutrition realm for MMA. And
Mm-hmm.
like, what in the world? Like a year ago, like I wasn't charging anyone. And so it's a business that kind of fell into my lap, but it became a really successful one. And then I started working with general population, and everything changed.
Yeah. So you listen to the Gary V's of the world today, and they're always saying, if you want a job somewhere, go intern for free, or if you want to be a consultant of some sort, give out free advice. You're doing it before it's even like a cool thing or the popular thing to do it, and then you just stumble upon a career, basically.
Yeah, and I'm still a huge believer of that. In fact, it is unreal. You wouldn't believe how many people now, I'm like, hey, I want to get into nutrition, and they start asking me all these questions about what they want to do to get into nutrition, and I'm honest with a lot of them, and just tell them like, you're never going to succeed, because the questions you're asking me, like, your heart's not in the right place. Like, I want to get into nutrition. In the same conversation, how much should I charge? I'm like, what are you talking about? You shouldn't charge anything. First, you should go to school and learn this stuff. Like, people are already like trying to figure out how to make a business with nutrition before they actually have any actual nutrition education.
Right.
And these people just, what it is, it's a whole separate conversation, and why fad diets are so important. People have now realized that everyone needs nutrition, and it's very easy to sell fear. And so what people do is, like, they know that people need to improve their health, so people are willing to pay for that. So you have all these people getting in nutrition because maybe they didn't like the field they were in, or they weren't successful at it. So like, you know what, I work out, I look good, I have abs. I'm going to start selling nutrition. And it's horrible, it's dangerous, and but they make money doing it. So
based on fear tactics.
Oh gosh, yeah. In fact, you see it a lot now. Like, there's so many doctors that are getting out of their regular practice to do nutrition, and they have no education. And you can, like doctors aren't educated in nutrition. They'll take something like community nutrition. They might take like 1 or 2 nutrition courses in school,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not like applicable nutrition. It's not how
Right.
to apply nutritional therapy. And
they're just riding the coattails of their MD.
Some of your top ones now, like you talked about, the carnivore MD idiot. He's a psychologist or psychiatrist. Like, that's he's got a doctor of psychology, and like, he's known as the carnivore MD. It's like, he's not a nutrition doctor. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this guy's a psychiatrist, which he uses more than anything because he's very good at manipulating human emotion to make you fear things and buy. Then you got one of the other guys now that's very big in it. He's a pharmacist,
right?
But now he's pushing nutrition. It's just absolutely absurd how easily people are fooled by these people. But it's a whole separate conversation. But it's just nutrition's a great field. Like, I love it. It became like something that was completely accidental.
Mm-hmm.
I did not mean to get into it whatsoever, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Like my wife can tell you, it's probably annoying to some extent how, like, I'm constantly researching, I'm constantly looking at new data, constantly like reading research.
You're in school right now.
Yes, and I am back in school, and my plan is to finish until I want a doctor of nutrition science. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to finish with that, and not that it even matters, but I think there's so many doctors out there claiming to be doctors of nutrition and using that MD that I'm going to actually get a PhD in nutrition.
Yeah.
Just because it help with book sales or whatever. I don't know. And I love it. Like, I genuinely love to learn,
mm-hmm.
and it's constantly evolving, like that's the beauty of science. And it's why I get irate with these people when anyone who says you can't trust the science, I immediately write off as someone who just doesn't understand science. I'm like, no, like if you said you can't trust political interpretations of science, or cool, like I can get behind that, but like, oh, you can't trust the science. I'm like, shut up, man. You also can't trust your weed smoking brother-in-law who conspiracy theorists. Like
Right.
you can't trust that. But science isn't inherently fact. Like science is the search of facts. Like it's the constant search. Like the best scientists in the world will come up with something, make a claim, and then spend the rest of their life finding ways to prove themselves wrong.
Correct.
Like that's actually what science is, and that's why it's our best. It is our best form of information. At one point, the science said the Earth's flat, and then science evolved, and scientists got better, and the newer research, you know what, the Earth is round, even though there's idiots who still think the Earth is flat. They're the ones who say you can't trust the science. But without science, we wouldn't have known that. It's
Right.
constantly the search of truth, and I love that. Like there's
Cool.
things I'm learning in school now in nutrition that were completely different than what was being taught years ago.
Yeah.
And that's so much fun to me. Like it's in a world where people hear something and then will spend the rest of their life believing that thing because they heard it on a blog. Like it's really refreshing to me to be one of the people and to be surrounded by people who are constantly trying to find new things out. And that I have a blast doing that.
Well, cool. Let's talk about your decision to sell the gym or get out of the industry. Let's put it that way, rather.
Whew. Yeah, that I loved my gym. I loved the people. I genuinely did. Like I cared so much about my people. And if I didn't, I would have sold the gym much sooner than I did. But honestly, my nutrition business outran my gym. Like my nutrition business blew up. I was being called to be out of town constantly. I loved it more than I loved my gym. I just didn't love the gym industry anymore. I just didn't. I wasn't in love with it. And I always said the day I didn't want to go to work anymore, I would get rid of it.
Yeah.
And I remember the day waking up, like I don't want to go. Like I genuinely did not want to go, and I sold it a week later.
Yeah.
Not even a full week. I think I sold it 4 or 5 days later to the first price. Like the first price that I said, someone countered with a lower one. Like, okay. I sold it just because I needed out. I didn't love it. And if you don't love it, like I'm sure this, you've probably been told by a client, like if you show up and it's obvious you're not enjoying coaching, it's obvious to them, and they will be the first to call you out for it.
And you're not gonna be able to motivate others.
No, you can't. If you're not motivated to be there, you're not going to motivate other people. And even if you're motivated to be there, but you suck at motivating other people, they're going to think you're unmotivated.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't. I didn't enjoy it anymore. I still cared about the people. Obviously, I still cared about fitness, and I thought people should be in shape. But I just knew I wasn't the guy to be prescribing it anymore.
Yeah.
So I sold the gym. Best decision I've made career-wise, just because, again, I wasn't in love with it. And it allowed my nutrition to explode after that. Like it did a lot better.
Was the gym really taking up that much of your time still?
It really wasn't taking up that much of my time. It was a lot. It was taking up a lot of my energy, like my emotional energy, my emotional space. Like I'm a big believer now in eliminating anything that doesn't serve you, like anything. And the gym, like I said, I loved it, but I had a very distinct culture at the gym. Like I had beliefs that I still believe are the best for fitness. I had developed a culture, and I started traveling a lot. Well, with me being gone, culture of the gym changed, and it wasn't a culture that I believed in honestly anymore. I still had like small groups in the gym who still like believe that same culture. Those cultures of like, I've always said like your warm-ups, your cool downs, and your strength work are far more important than the things that we call CrossFit, even though those are also part of real CrossFit programming too, but the coach that was coaching most of the classes when I was gone was very much just into the make people bleed, sweat, and puke kind of attitude. And people like that because you get an endorphin rush from that. They don't understand it's not good for them. They like it's literally this addictive endorphin rush. And so the culture started changing. It wasn't a culture that I enjoyed. It wasn't a culture I believed in, and it was a culture that I knew would lead to what it's led to. And after I sold the gym, hardly anyone that used to work out there still works out there, because that leads to ultimate, it leads to failure. Like it causes adrenal issues. And once that endorphin rush falls off, you just can't stick with it. People get injured. And so I sold it right at the right time because I just I saw those things happening and I didn't want to be a part of it. So
And you're never disconnected when you have a business. Even
no,
if you're out there working with a fighter, you're still getting a text or an email or a call or new leads coming in, or
always if you're running one, if you're running one well. And I remember that was kind of the stuff that was kind of dragging me down. I was even getting upset because like I would have people talk about stuff. Like I'd be out of town and I'd have people complaining, being like, hey, like the whoever's coaching isn't really like fixing my form. This is what I was doing. What would you do? And like, I feel bad about this now, but I'm like, I don't have time to worry about that. I've got to get like, I have this guy that has to step on the scale. And if he doesn't make weight, he's losing millions of dollars, which means I lose a lot of money. Like I have to handle this, but I still cared about those people. So I'm still like trying to manage that too.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided I had to sell it. And, it was a good business decision for me. And honestly, I think it was good for the area too. There was just too many CrossFit gyms in the area.
We had 8 at one point.
That's ridiculous. That's nuts.
Yeah.
I would like to, I was the second. I was the longest lasting until you guys outlasted until Thunder. Like that was I was one of the first in, and at that point I really enjoyed that we'd been there that long. You know, like we'd really like withstood the test of time, and you guys have far out exceeded, exceeded that now.
It was cool, even though there were 8 of us in town, there'd be times where you'd be like, I just don't know if this person's best suited for my facility, and I think it'd be a great fit at your place. And then they come over and be great members, and then vice versa.
Yeah. And you have to be that way. I never cared that much about like having the most numbers. I genuinely wanted to be the best. Like I genuinely wanted to be the best. And I want to be the best for my people.
How did you define being the best?
People weren't getting injured. To me, the ultimate gauge of any gym, especially a CrossFit gym, is okay. How many people are actually improved? It's not how many members do you have. It's not how many people do you have showing up every day,
or how big your facility or something.
No, none of that stuff matters. It's literally like how many of these people are actually progressing years down the road. And even if they quit, if someone quits your gym, like they quit the gym, and I've always viewed it this way. Same thing with me as nutrition, like as a nutrition coach. And this does happen. I would be lying if I said it doesn't. If someone works for me for a year and then they quit, and then a year later they've gained all this weight back, well, I failed them. Like they failed, like for one reason or another, there's something, and maybe it was just they just gave up on everything. But I still kind of look at it like, well, what could I have done to make them want to, like, to educate them or make them more passionate and want to stay? And with gyms, that was kind of the thing. I'm like, I was never concerned with what someone was doing for the next hour. I was concerned with what they would be doing for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. And that's what I was known for. Like if I saw you picking up a deadlift and your toe was like, your right foot was too far to the right, I was literally going to stop you, make you stop the weight and pull your foot in. Like, and it annoyed a lot of people.
Yeah.
I can think of several people right now in my head that it annoyed, but none of them are doing CrossFit anymore because after I left, they got injured. Because I was so critical about that, because I've always said those are the things that keep you out of the nursing home.
Yes.
Like what keeps you out of a nursing home is your ability to squat efficiently, your ability to deadlift efficiently. And I would always say even like a burpee, your ability to go to the ground and pick yourself back up. And if you're not doing those things efficiently and correctly, I don't care how fast you're doing them. One day you're not going to be able to do them fast at all. You're going to be old and you're not going to be able to do them fast. But if you're doing them efficiently and strongly, well, hopefully that translates to doing them efficiently at, in your 80s.
Yeah.
And then it keeps you independent and out of the nursing home. And I genuinely had that attitude then towards it. And I always have that attitude towards fitness. And I think that's important. Again, it's you're seeing a weird shift in CrossFit. I've always said, and people will say this, like, oh, you're anti-CrossFit. No, not at all. I think CrossFit is the greatest thing that ever happened to fitness. Like, you have so many people now doing things that they would have never done without CrossFit.
No one was doing a thruster 15 years ago.
No. Hey, how many women were doing power cleans or deadlifting?
Right.
Like, that's CrossFit built up every form of fitness. It was good for powerlifting. It was good for Olympic lifting. Yep. It was good for, look, the Spartan rate, literally everything in fitness got better because CrossFit made fitness popular. It made it like a pop culture. And so that is beautiful. I love that aspect of it. The issue with CrossFit is there's no quality control. So what you do in your gym,
and that's because of the affiliate model. It's not
It
a
is.
franchise. If it was a franchise and there's shooting out the workout for everybody to do, and there's a higher level
Yes.
education than a 2-day seminar,
yes,
then we can regulate a little better.
yeah, and that used to really make me mad at HQ, but now is like I'm a much better businessman. I don't even care anymore. It doesn't bother me that HQ does that, because I kind of understand the best way to make money is to do it the way they're doing it, and the best way for them to you know to not stress it so much is to do it the way they're doing it. Like, imagine how much more money it would cost them to be like watching everyone. That would be tough. So now I just kind of look at it like it's your own personal responsibility. And a lot of the gyms just don't care. Like they genuinely, they are there to get your money. They do not, they do not see a personal responsibility to program right, to do things that actually matter. And that's an issue. Like, you have to make money. Like, that's the thing. If you work out at a CrossFit gym and like you're paying number one, you should be paying a high rate, because it's not Planet Fitness. It is different. But you should understand that your gym has to make money to continue to be there year after year. I know you guys have like raised rates. Like, you guys were known for that. Like, you were the first one in the area. You guys raised rates. And I know, like, other gyms in the area, I was even like, wow, that's like really cool. That's gutsy. That's smart. Now, being a businessman, like, I consider myself a much better businessman than I was even when I owned a gym. It's not just smart, it's absolutely necessary. And the gyms that don't will fail. Like, you will that's just economics. You are going to fail.
I always tell everybody that having a business is like having another kid. I've got to keep that business healthy. It's got to have profit margins. So if we're impacting people's lives, I've got to be able to keep that gym open. And the only way I can do it is if we're making a certain amount of money and I'm able to put so much back.
How much did you all raise your rates last time you raised rates?
$10.
$10, 2 coffees a month. It's like 2 Starbucks coffees a month. That's one less television. Like, what, I don't even know how much Netflix is a month, but that's, get rid of Netflix a month if you have to. Like, it's that bit of a difference. And I understand, like, at first people might take that offensive. Like, why are you going to raise rates? I'm like, so we can still be here next year, because especially now with inflation the way it is, like people often, they might not realize, listen, like, every time you flush the toilet, that costs me. And now it's costing me more than it used to. Every time you all slam a weight on the ground, like that weight lasts a little longer. Like, the whole concept of a gym, like, a gym is literally like beating itself up. Like, the more you grow, the more people you have destroying your equipment. That's just how a gym is. So I have to buy more equipment. Well, guess what? That equipment's now a lot more expensive than it was a few years ago. If I'm making the same amount of money off you all as I was then, I literally lost money having clients.
Correct.
Like, that's the thing. And I wish I understood that more then. And you guys obviously, like, you guys understood that before anyone. And it's funny, because I talk to people, and this is just businesses in general. Me with nutrition, I've raised my rates, and you always have people who are upset with it, but you always have your really good business people at your gym, or at your, like, in my nutrition thing, like, my clients that are really good business people, they'll be the first to tell you it was a great decision. Yeah. Like, that was smart, and they won't even care to pay it. Like, I have nutrition clients now. I have a girl that's in the UFC now. She's shockingly not so, but one of my favorites that I work with. And she was one of the first ones to tell me, and this was even a year ago, she's like, you got to start charging more. Fighters, I genuinely don't charge fighters a ton. I charge them a lot more than I used to, but I don't charge them a whole lot, like as much, because the way my system is, I educate them as they go. So they kind of like need me a little less. And I understand that the more I work with fighters, the more it advertises for my general population. So, and this girl, she was like happy to pay me more because she just thought it was worth more. And mind you, I'm charging her 3 times what I charged my fighters like 3 years ago. Right. She's already paying that. And she's like, hey, you need to pay more. And I have a general population client right now who literally pays me $50 more a month than what I charge, because they think it's worth more a month than what I was charging them. That's crazy. And then this year they sent me a $1,500 bonus. They just sent it without it saying anything. And when I saw that come in, I'm like, what? And they're like, you've changed our life. You do really good. And we just wanted to show you that. Like, what are you talking? Like it's so unreal. Like, and the more you value business and you make those business decisions, you get more people like that who understand that value.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's like Cody Hubbard down the street that we go to at Breaker Barber.
Yeah.
If the guy's booked out 2 months in advance, it means his products and service is too cheap.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather him raise $10 so I have a little more flexibility with appointment times.
Yeah, and that's kind of hard. That's a hard thing to wrap your head around. A lot it was for me as a gym. I'm sure it was for you all at first at the gym. But you have to look at it. Like I did this with nutrition when I raised my rates. I raised my rates during COVID, like by more than double. You have to look at it like, okay, how many people can I lose and still stay profitable? And that sucks. You don't want to lose anyone, but you have to understand that it might happen.
It's just numbers.
It's just numbers, and you have to be able to separate personal and business. You have to you have to be able to separate that so you can give people the best personal value as well.
Right.
You have to separate those emotions. And like I said, with COVID, so I remember when COVID happened, we talk about like this big great event
because it's not taking place right now.
That's not a thing. But I guess so when COVID shutdowns happened, I'll say that I lost, I believe the numbers ended up being 97% of my general population quit.
Dang.
And they quit,
which is nuts because that showed us that health was more important than ever.
Yes. But people were so uncertain. They just they didn't know what their money situation would look like. I lost 97% of my business. The UFC shut down, so I lost all my clients for fighting. So I have a baby on the way. Like my wife's a few months pregnant. I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, what in the world? Like, what am I going to do? I'm already thinking like, okay, I can go back to doing some security stuff. Like, I'll figure it out. I was freaking out because I thought I could no longer stay in the nutrition business for a while. I knew I would find a way to make money. But I didn't know what I would do. And I remember one of my best friends and one of the best business people I know, James Krause, he was like, well, you lost members because you lost clients because you don't charge enough. And like, I knew the point he was trying to make, but I'm like, man, like
in that situation, it doesn't sound logical.
That makes sense. And his whole thing, he said, if you charge more, you would lose less people. And my whole argument to him was, Michael, listen, if they can't afford to pay this now, like, how would they afford to charge if I'm charging more? He goes, they can't. He goes, but if you charge to a level where people who aren't affected by COVID can work with you, you're fine. And I remember he kind of dared me and made a bet with me. Essentially, he said, if this doesn't work, I will literally, like, I'll give you money. Like, I will give you some job to do remotely, because he lives in Kansas City. He said, I will find a way to pay you to live. Don't worry. I'm not going to let you, he's my best friend. He's like, I'm not going to let your kid starve. I'm not going to let you struggle. Just trust me. And I raised my rates more than double. I raised my rates almost 75%. And within a month, so this is, COVID happened. I lost almost everyone. Within 2 months later, I raised my rates. Within 2 months later, I had more people paying me 75% more than I had before COVID shutdowns happened. And it completely changed. My clients went from, like, it all became like people, other countries, West Coast. Like, my clientele just grew. The types of people, the culture is just different. It was such a different clientele. It was just odd to explain.
Did you recognize that a person paying more was a better client? And I don't mean as a person, but did they take your nutrition advice and apply it more seriously?
Yeah. And to even now, like the way my rates are now, I will have like students pay me. So I still get clients that I know. And I ask what their job is. I ask everyone in my application process what their job is. And that's really more so I can just determine if I see someone is a receptionist, I know that person's not burning a lot of calories during the day because they're sitting. Yeah. If I see someone works construction, I know that they're burning a lot of calories. So I need to know that for nutrition. But so I find out their job, and one thing I've really started to understand, the people who I know are I know that their income level is that to where they can afford me, but they've had to sacrifice to afford me, they do the best. The ones that, like, I have some like CEOs, I have some surgeons, I have like, I know people who, like, to them my rate's nothing.
Right.
They don't do well.
Right.
So it's like there's that weird bell curve there. It's almost the people who have a hard time affording it but do find a way. They by far do the best because they're sacrificing.
Yeah.
The people who just throw it at you, it's no big deal. They don't do as well because it's not a sacrifice of them.
Right.
But the clientele did change. And in fact, like I felt bad about that. So I felt bad about the fact that I had priced myself out of a lot of people that were at the same socioeconomic status that I even was at the time. So I decided at that point, and this was just a decision I made, was I'm now going to change all my social media to giving so much free information that you don't even have to hire me, and you can get results. So I like when I make an educational post, I literally ask myself, is this information enough to change people? And that I literally did that as like it had no money motivation. It had no business motivation. It was literally because I felt bad that I was charging more. I wanted to give out free info. And it was the best business decision I've ever done. Like my business blew up. It took a big upturn when I started charging more. And it took a huge upturn when I started giving out free information.
So I had Ryan White on last week. He's a mobile barber.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He said, I've got two prices when it comes to my service, full price or free. So you're saying the exact same thing right
cool.
here.
Yeah.
You raised your rates, but here you are giving free advice to general population. And then you just stole the question out of my mouth. I was going to ask you, how do you when did you really see your personal brand explode to 28,000 followers and a blue check next to your name?
When I started giving out free information, it had nothing to do with actual business. It was like, okay, I'm going to give out all this free info. I get people, I think I'm at 6 now, people that have messaged me saying they've lost 100 pounds or more in a year that they've never talked to me before. I'm saying they've never even, when they message me that, I'll look back at my DMs.
Nothing.
Like it's never once. So that out of all the people, the 6 people who have lost 100 pounds or more with me in a year, I have never talked to them once. Like they've never even asked a question on I do free Q&As regularly.
Mm-hmm.
They've never even asked a question. They just watch. Wow. And they come to me and say, like, I lost all this weight following your Instagram. I appreciate it. Like, that's huge. Like that's really, my wife's seen me. I get emotional with that stuff. That's super cool to me. Cause I believe that one of the fitness, especially in America, has this weird barrier, like this socioeconomic barrier of entry. And it's almost like these people, it's almost like having a new Rolex or a new car or a new outfit is being able to say that I do. I'm not saying if you do any of these, I don't mean it negatively, but it's become like a fashion to say like, oh, I work out at this gym, or I do this, or I follow this diet.
Yeah.
Like people love being able to say like, I only eat grass-fed meat. I'm like, well, that's awesome. Cool. That's really good for you. But the woman who's like barely surviving, the single mom of 3 on WIC, she should also be in shape. She should also be able to do that. So maybe we should quit telling people they have to do these expensive forms of fitness to get in shape. And I care a lot about that. I despise that attitude. And a lot of times it's subconscious. People don't mean to do that.
Right.
But it happens a lot. And these fad diets are always geared towards those people. Like you need to do this to lose weight. Like it's dangerous if you're doing this. I'm like, shut up. It's not dangerous. Like it has to be something that everyone can do. And this allows me to appeal to all those groups. And I absolutely love that. That's cool to me. I told someone the other day that my general population, honestly, I feel better now. Used to, when I started working with fighters, I loved like hearing my name in the media. I'm just being honest. I loved hearing my name in the media. Yeah. Like it made me feel really good. And now I get more pleasure working with my general population. Mm-hmm. Let's say like a fighter, you're getting them on weight. And that's awesome. But that's a very small goal. If I can change,
it's temporary.
It's very temporary. If I can change the way, this 30-year-old mom views her nutrition, I can change the way she feeds her kids, the way she values the way she feeds her kids. And you see it all the time. I can't tell you how many parents I work with that then tell me it changed their kids. And then it can maybe change their kids. Like you make, when I work with general population, it can have generational changes.
That's awesome.
And that's huge. And I look at it that way. I'm like, listen, if I can change this woman's or this man's nutrition status and change their kids, I'm not just changing the way their kids eat. That in turn changes the way their kids behave, the way their kids do in school, the way their kids will view themselves down the road. Like it can have that kind of impact, and that's cool. Like
and now we're talking about leaving a legacy.
Yes. And that's it's one that no one will care about eventually. Like they won't even know they cared about it, but like you could change tons of lives and never really get credit for it, but you know that you did it. And that's really cool to me. Like I love that.
100%. So you've got all this going on, you're building your personal brand, and then you decide to open your own food prep service.
Yeah. And that was another business that was never a goal or meant to be. I had a lot of people ask me what kind of stuff my fighters eat. So I'm like, you know what? People want it. Might as well sell it and like provide it to them. And I have the recipes, and I would give people recipes at times. But I can't tell you how many times I've given someone a recipe and they just couldn't do it. Like it didn't make sense to them, or they did it wrong. And I'm like, well, heck, like I can't really do it for you, but I'm just going to start doing meal prep.
Yeah.
And it's a business. The meal prep business does really well, but it was one, I don't even advertise it. Like I really don't advertise it. I don't push it hard because it's just kind of a side thing. And it was never a goal to be like a huge money maker, but it does do good. But it is my goal now to push it a little bit more. I'm looking to start advertising. I'm looking at ways to start shipping and doing things like that to make it a bigger thing, because I see the need for it. And the one thing I feel like I excel at cooking wise, and how I've excelled with my athletes, is so like a lot of people, they look at how do I make really healthy food taste good. And they look at it that way. And the way I've always done it is, how do I make really good tasting food healthy? I like reverse engineer it from taste good to healthy, instead of go from healthy to taste good. And, like I've had fighters that's the way they approached it. Like, hey, I really love pizza, and I have a lot more success finding a way to make a really healthy pizza than I do telling them they just can't eat pizza.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. I remember Tim Elliott changed. I'll have to send him this. Tim Elliott changed the way I viewed nutrition. And if you know Tim Elliott, he's one of the wildest humans on the planet. He's in the UFC. His nickname is Awkward. Joe Rogan calls him Awkward, because when he fights, it's real awkward. Just because there's no human on earth like Tim Elliott, so no human on earth fights like Tim Elliott. And I remember the first time I worked with him, he literally told me, he goes, hey, when you're making my meal plan, make sure you account for one dark beer every day at breakfast. I'm just like, and I'm like, he's not smiling. I'm looking at him like for a joke, and he's not smiling. I'm like, I'm not going to let you have dark beer at breakfast. And number one, why are you drinking that at breakfast?
Yeah.
He goes, well, here's the thing. I drink it every day at breakfast. I'm going to drink one every single day, whether you tell me I can or not. He just knows him.
Yeah.
He said, I'm going to do it. He goes, so I'm telling you this, if you don't account for that 200, 300 calories every day at breakfast, then I'm going to be over that every single day. And it's your fault because you knew about it. And I'm like, son of a gun, that's kind of brilliant, because all the other people are just sneaking it in.
Yeah.
He's already telling me he's going to do it. So I need to adjust for it.
Yeah.
And I adjusted for it, because again, he was just honest and told me, and that changed the way I looked at it forever. Like, so now instead of telling all these people they can't do, I find ways to make it work. I meet them where they're at. And I guess you could call it flexible dieting. The only issue with flexible dieting is people now have bastardized it to, well, you can eat whatever you want as long as it fits macros. And that's just not true. Like a flexible dieting is like, you're going to eat like high quality, highly satiating, high volume food most of the time. But what flexible dieting means is that if we monitor it and we're tracking it and we're being moderate at times, like we can also fit in foods that don't really go by that.
Yeah.
Like, so maybe you're eating, like a chicken, rice, and veggies every day for dinner, 5-6 days a week. But because I know that 90% of the time I'm making these really, these choices that are geared towards my goal, I know that 10% of the time, if I choose a food that's not necessarily on plan, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's what flexible dieting really is. And that's kind of how I work with my fighters and work with the general population. So we, like once I recognize the benefit of that for sustainability, long-term results, that kind of changed there. I'll count that as another time my business really did good.
Yeah.
And Tim Elliott unintentionally made me make that business change.
That's cool. I know a couple years ago I was on to you about really upping your video content on your page, and here you've done it. It's turned out really good. How much has your page grown since you went to video?
I know what you're getting at. Since you gave me that advice, how much has my business grown? No,
No.
no, seriously, honestly though, a lot. Like that was really good. To the point that I didn't even know this was a thing. Instagram pays me for reels now. Did you know? I got a notification saying that like you were selected, because I guess I don't even know how it goes.
Volume, yeah.
That you can now start getting paid for your content. I didn't have to do anything but put in like, okay. I thought it was a joke. In fact, I'm like, this can't be real. So then I searched it. Wow, I can actually. Okay, so I did that. I applied, and you put in your bank information, and now like I literally get paid by Instagram for content, and that's mind blowing. So and I did. It's where I don't like Instagram. I genuinely don't like it. I liked it more than Facebook because Instagram was where I could go to avoid all the political commentary. But now Instagram has also become this weird political place where now instead of these big long rants, people post memes and think they're true. So that drives me crazy. But I understand how good Instagram is for business, and I couldn't reach. Everyone has an Instagram now. Almost every single one has one. So that's how I'm able to reach people of all socioeconomic levels, is through it. So I appreciate it and I use it. You have to. Like I think this is going to be a little bit of a hot take, but I genuinely think if you have a service business and you do not have an Instagram, you're lazy. Like it is a lazy, like I don't like Instagram. I don't care.
Gary Vee says you're basically non-existent if you're not putting out there.
It's selfish. Like genuinely, if you have a business where you have to sell to people and you have a family, whether you write, I'm not saying you're doing it on purpose, but by now, if you're paying attention, you have to realize how much Instagram helps your business. You're selfish and you're doing your family a disservice by not using that.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, when you look at it like that, that matters. If you're a personal trainer, you're not using Instagram. Like I can't wrap my head around that. I get maybe you don't understand Instagram, you don't get it. It's not an excuse. That's extremely lazy. Spend an hour of your time learning some things on Instagram, and that's all I did. I mean, I genuinely had to, like, I started posting reels a while back. I had to look up how to do reels. Like I had to delete a few, like I did it and I did it wrong. So I had to delete them. Mm-hmm. Like I had to learn that stuff. Like I've never taken a course on that. Like I had to learn
in life that you're going to get good at. You have to fail, so many times before.
Absolutely. And if you like, I can't wrap my head around someone who's like, hey, I'm in this service industry. I do this thing, but I don't want to learn how to make more money doing it. That is so weird. All the money in the world is going to people no matter what. And especially if you go to America, they're going to print it whether you're getting it or not. So like, why not view this like, you know what? My family deserves that money. Mm-hmm. I'm going to learn how to make that money. Yeah. And when you realize that, that makes a huge difference. And I remember, I will never teach my kids this. My parents taught me this, and it was it was out of a good place. Like a lot of people do this and it comes from a good place in their heart. Like money doesn't buy happiness. They don't mean it. I understand what they're trying to say, but that is a very dumb philosophy. Money doesn't buy happiness. I get what you're trying to say. Money by itself can't make you happy, but money makes it much easier to be happy. That's just the truth. Money makes life much less stressful. Exactly. The only people right now that are really like suffering from inflation are because, I mean, that's literally what it is inflation is outrunning your ability to make money. And that's horrible. Like that's sad. It really is. But I kind of look at that back like, well, like what if for this is a whole separate conversation, but what if our education system was better at teaching people how to make money? How much less people would be suffering right now because they would actually know how to make money. They would know how to do that. Mm-hmm. Our education system doesn't teach that. And that's sad, that sucks.
Or how to manage your money.
Or
that's the one thing. It doesn't matter how much money you make, it's how you manage the money you have.
Absolutely. Like my wife is so good at that. We do financially well, but if like my wife will second guess buying a $20 shirt because she is so in her head, she's like, well, that $20 could go to pay a portion of a water bill. And it's like, I'm like, my goodness, like I have to like sometimes like buy her gift cards to clothing places just to make like, listen, I've already bought the gift card. It's spent, do it. But she's so good at that. And that's awesome. You have to know how to manage that money, and people just don't understand that. And it's, I could say I believe in extreme ownership. So I'll always say, I think everyone should view everything as their fault.
Yes.
So I do think the education system sucks at teaching people how to make money and how to manage money, but don't think we should have that attitude about it. I think we should have the attitude is like, hey, I suck at making money and I suck at managing money, so I need to figure out how to do that, because you can figure it out. Like, you're able to figure that out. There's enough books now. There's enough things out there to figure that out. In fact, with the internet now, there's infinite ways to figure that out. And it does, like, it stinks. I'm not trying to like step on the toes of people who have a job where there's not the ability to make more money. I get that, but maybe you need to look at managing it better. Look at Gary Vee. Gary Vee still goes to yard sales and does, like, it's one of the coolest things in the world. Like, Gary Vee, like, even like to kind of become who he became, like, he would go to yard sales, buy stuff, and then put them on eBay for more expensive. That's hilarious. And he still does it.
Yeah.
Like, you see all this thing, he still does it. And he shows how much money you can make doing that. Like, there's little ways like that. Like, there are ways to make more money. And as far as inflation goes, I don't know when all this is going to end, but eventually it has to. So I tell people, I have some friends that have come to me and like stressed and very upset about it. And I'm like, listen, like, here's the thing. You can't do anything about inflation. Like, you can't do anything about the politics that caused this, but you can take that emotional investment you're putting into worrying and putting it into something. Putting it into learning about money management, putting it into learning about how to make more money, maybe just putting it into learning how to not stress, because it's going to happen either way. So like, you can't choose that, but you can choose your emotional reaction to it. And we live in again, this is part, it's because of social media, because all that information's in our face, but like, only you're responsible, your reaction to that. Like, this goes back to like the happiest times, like with my kids, aren't really doing things that cost a lot of money anyway. Like, yeah, when I really think about that, me and my wife have been doing this thing. It was her idea. She's such a good mom and good at thinking of these things. So like, we will literally lay in bed and take this projector and shine it on the ceiling and watch goofy, and do these roller coasters, like these virtual reality roller coasters.
That's cool.
And our kids lose their mind. Oh, the kids are like losing their mind. And I told her, and we're planning on going to like Dollywood, an amusement park, in a week or two. And like, you know what's going to be so funny? We're going to spend all those hours at Dollywood, and we're going to have at least
the real thing.
Yeah. There's going to be at least one tantrum. Like, they're going to be hungry. They're going to be tired. They're going to be hot. And we're going to look back and be like, you know what? Do you remember that time we laid in bed for free and pretended to be on a roller coaster? Little things like that. I just I laugh about. Kids will make you think about money differently. Like, my kids would rather play with a stick and like would rather like hit things with sticks than play with their more expensive things. It drives me crazy, but
it's funny.
But it's it's a whole.
Well, I want to wrap up with a couple questions. So this is the Common Sense Business podcast. What are some like basic? So my goal with this podcast is to give out free advice, business owners or people that are looking to get into entrepreneurship. So I want to give out some simple tactics that can help grow your business, or maybe like things that have been firm foundations that you've had in your head in your business that have helped you succeed and grow.
I would say the first thing is, you can't make money just doing one thing. Like, you have to, like, especially if you own a business, your business cannot just sell the main thing. If you're a gym, sell shirts, sell supplements, sell products, sell personal training.
A different program fit club.
Yes. I remember Rob Wolf once theorized, and he had data, and it looks this way, that gyms that don't make at least 50% of their money from personal training will ultimately fail.
Yeah.
And he was showing how many gyms fail because they don't do that. Anyway, things like that, like, you have to be doing that, constantly evolve. Like, you have to constantly evolve, because it's already like, I hate TikTok, but I'm literally figuring out TikTok. I have a TikTok now. I haven't started doing it because I'm already seeing that Instagram is evolving to TikTok. I don't want to do it, but I want to be able to continue to pay my bills. So I'm going to learn it. You have to constantly evolve, and you have to change with the times and with what's hot. Like, you have to do that. So you have to be willing to evolve and adapt, because times will change. I'll also say you have to, you can't become the business. If you become synonymous with the business, you will lose your mind. It's why people burn out. Like if the only thing you do, like you're doing this as well now,
Mhm.
things like this. Like if your whole life was only Thunder Valley CrossFit would suffer because you would no longer like Thunder Valley CrossFit as much.
Right.
Because you just can't put your entire life into that. It's toxic. It's not good for you. It's not good for your family. And then ultimately it won't be good for the gym.
Mhm.
So find passions that are outside of your realm.
Yeah.
Like I told you, it's almost unhealthy at times. Nutrition is huge for me. Like I genuinely love looking at it, researching that. I just got a notification on my phone earlier about there's a group that I'm with that they're constantly putting out new research on nutrition. It's all based on nutrition and fitness, and they'll send you new research every month
Mhm.
to look at. And I looked down at my phone and I just saw I got that, and I'm like jonesing
You're
a little
ready to-
bit.
you're ready to
yeah,
get off
like,
this podcast.
yeah, like I really want to read what this is. So that like, but I've dove in the last few years. I've dove hard back into hunting, hiking with my wife. Like I love, like with my kid, doing things with my kids, working out, like that is a separate hobby than nutrition. Like I have to have these other hobbies so I don't eventually hate nutrition.
Right.
So again, don't marry yourself only to your business, whatever that is. You will burn out.
Well, cool.
Those would probably be my main ones. I will say one more. I know this isn't a relationship podcast, but manage your relationships around it. That is your friends, your spouse, everything. Like if your business makes you a worse husband or wife, you need to figure that out, because again, that is going to make your business fail.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's going to make you worse at your business because you're going to be home hearing about it, or you're going to be stressed at home. If you surround yourself with friends that aren't like you, they're not like-minded. Like if you're trying to build a business and you're not surrounding yourself with people that are talking about ways to build businesses and build money, that's going to bother you. Like that's going to make your business much worse because you're not like-minded. All of the people I hang out with the most, I have friends that don't do business. Like they're not into that stuff, but they're the best at what. Almost every friend I have is among the best at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for ways to be better. They're building brands. They're entrepreneurs. They're constantly evolving and looking for that. And that helps me tremendously. Like I look back at some of the friends I used to hang out with, and that was not their world. And slowly I kind of sunk into their world because their world was lazier and easier to sink into. But I'm much better off now surrounding myself by people like you. Like, hey, you should really, like, you have good content. You should really start posting videos. That was huge for me. Kraus, looking at someone like Kraus, is like, hey man, like you're not charging enough. If I wasn't hanging around people like that and I was just listening to the people that like, wow, you charge too much, my business would have failed.
Right.
So I constantly surround yourself with people who challenge you to change what you're doing.
I literally did a monologue podcast for this show 2 days ago. It says, what was it called? It was who's in your top 5, or why the top 5 is the most important decision you can make, or something. And it's just talking about that. It's the how much you benefit as a person surrounding yourself with people that are going to push you. And that can be in any aspect, is what I was saying on this podcast. Think of the 5 fittest people that you know. Start working out with them.
Yeah.
Think of people that eat healthy all the time. Start surrounding yourself with them. Think of people that are successful in business. Start learning from them.
Yeah.
It can be anything. It doesn't have to be, all encompassing.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, when I think about it, I never really thought about but the people I talk to the most outside of clients, I'm not going to count clients because that's business, but even them, a lot of them are very successful. But locally, I don't hardly talk to anyone. Like I literally talk to you. I talked to one of your clients and one of mine, Harrison Wexler. He's a great businessman. I talked to my buddies Phil Nave and Steve. They were the ones I went to Korea with. And you're obviously an entrepreneur, started a business, like starting new businesses and constantly doing things like that. Harrison is a very good businessman who blew up a business, sold it, and is constantly doing real estate, and just honestly, he's always happy.
Mm-hmm.
He just does what the guy, like he's done so good in business that now he fishes and hunts for a living, and works out at Thunder Valley. And then my buddies Phil and Steve, they're teachers. So you're like, but they are constantly like getting more education. They're constantly finding ways. Now they've gotten into, they're just teachers, you would say, but they've gotten into real estate. They own properties now. Like they're constantly doing new things
They're
to
not
make
just
more money.
staying in
And
their job.
oh,
Yeah.
of course not. And then, like I said, James Krause and people like that who are, I remember 7-8 years ago, James could barely afford to pay bills, and he's a multimillionaire now. And it's literally because he just obsessed over some other ways to make money and has constantly found ways to do it. So now that I think about it, like all the people I talk to the most are like doing the things that I'm doing or doing far beyond what I'm doing and making me have to chase them. So
there you go. So to wrap up, Tyler, if somebody wants to get connected with you as a potential client, how do they reach out to you?
Instagram honestly is the best way.
Just a direct message.
Yeah, you can do that. I get a lot of those, so I don't always see them, but I have like the link in my bio is literally an application to work with me.
Okay.
And if you don't necessarily know if you want to, it's fine. Like if you go to the website, there's literally a part where you can find and you can just contact me and ask me questions. I have my email up there. So like that's my personal email. I do answer my email. Those are going to be the best way. And that's Tyler Minton Nutrition is my Instagram handle, or my website, tylermintonnutrition.com.
Okay. And then what if a person wants to start ordering food from you?
That would be eattmn.com, or you can go to my Instagram or website. Both have links. To get to that.
Cool. Well, Tyler, I appreciate you hopping on today and telling us your journey and just ways to help people out there in business to get better.
I appreciate it. It's fun to talk about because I don't think about it until I talk about it, how much stuff's changed. So
yeah, we've talked a few times and we've never had a podcast like this. So it's kind of cool to hear the story. And
yeah, and I honestly feel like we covered like 25% of what we intended to, because I talk so much. So
all good.
We'll have to do another.
Well, listeners, appreciate you tuning in today, and be looking out for the next podcast. Thanks.
Awesome. Appreciate it.